word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about X-Men number 3 by Jerry Duggan and Pepe Larraz. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down to you why the High Evolutionary seems to have taken such an interest in the mutants of Krakoa. More importantly, why he is so interested in a couple of particular mutants on the current X-Men roster, namely Synch. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the hints at what the new X-Men villains Fei Long and Dr. Stasis have in store for the X-Men. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button and share the video all over the internet with all your friends, because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's talk about X-Men number 3. Okay, so when this kicks off, the thing that the X-Men are having to deal with is a character by the name of Herbert Wyndham, who is otherwise known as the High Evolutionary, a guy who, for the most part, has kind of been a thorn in the side of various characters across the Marvel Comics universe. He has been a thorn in the hide of the X-Men for quite some time, and this is one of those scenarios where the High Evolutionary arrives and he seems to be bearing a gift. But why is he so suddenly interested in the mutants of Krakoa? The reason why is because they terraformed Mars. They literally took a dead planet and turned it into a life-sustaining world. And he finds that incredibly interesting because that's kind of his MO. He likes watching progress and seeing things evolve, hence, the name, the High Evolutionary. He is also bearing a gift that he feels the mutants would likely want. A sphere that contains a virus that would, in short order, wipe out humanity and basically leave the Earth to the mutants. The mutants inherit the Earth, and they no longer would have to worry about Orcus or Xeno, the Right, or any of the other groups that are coming after them, and even some other characters like Dr. Stasis and Fei Long. All of their problems would essentially go away. This virus would ultimately sterilize humanity, keeping them from being able to create any more normal humans, more or less. They would just stop existing. This is something that is posited to happen anyway, but it would just happen faster if the X-Men accepted his gift. He does even posit that some humans may continue living on as post-humans, and he could even help them become that and even reach their full potential, kind of even throwing a jab at how he helped the mutant Rogue obtain, quotey fingers, her full potential. Rogue has had her dealings with the High Evolutionary as well, going back to Uncanny Avengers. She has even been captured by the High Evolutionary, where he's, for all intents and purposes, experimented on her to learn how her powers work. Long story short, the X-Men have no interest in what the High Evolutionary has to offer. They basically decide that if the High Evolutionary wants to try and help wipe out humanity, they can go ahead and just take a shot, because as Polaris so eloquently puts, when Rogue says not to hold back, the X-Men throw hands. Of course, the High Evolutionary is a being of pretty ridiculous power. I mean, the guy is by no means a slouch. He basically has a superhuman power grab bag at his disposal of superhuman strength and durability. He's not necessarily invulnerable, but he can take a pounding. And even more interesting than that, he's also brought along his daughter, Luminous, who has both the powers of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, meaning she has reality warping powers as well as superhuman speed. He also has his evolutionary guard, who are a grab bag of random and sundry, just ridiculously crazy characters who are all animals who have been evolved and experimented on by him. This kind of goes about roughly the way you would imagine, with the X-Men trying to stop the Spear from unleashing a virus that would sterilize humanity, which honestly would be in their best interest, but hey, it is what it is. The major point of concern here is that there are two particular mutants in the presence of the High Evolutionary who he has taken a very major interest in. Now, he's not only been interested in Rogue, who also has very recently gotten a power upgrade in the sense that she can now absorb other people's abilities at range. However, he's even more interested in the character Sunfire, who he feels Sunfire has more power than Rogue could ever hope to even absorb. Now, to be fair, Sunfire is a very powerful mutant. We actually witnessed this in just the previous issue of X-Men #2 when the X-Men took on the Annihilation Wave. Sunfire literally unleashed the power of the sun itself. He literally created enough fire and flame and heat to rival that of an actual sun. And yeah, the High Evolutionary's taken notice of this. But that's not really the end of it. The character who really catches his eye is the character Sync. A character who can also mimic mutant abilities. He can sync with other individuals and use their powers for as long as he needs to. His powers also greatly increased since he spent time in the vault, which was roughly centuries worth of time that he spent basically honing his abilities. Not only that, he's also learned, which is something once again, which was, I guess, supposedly retconned and then unretconned back into continuity, is that he can not just mimic the powers of other mutants, he can also mimic the powers of anyone who has superhuman abilities. Even mimicking the High Evolutionary's own daughter, Luminous, mimicking her power levels, which is what gets the High Evolutionary's attention. Now, of course, the High Evolutionary is able to take away Luminous's abilities, which would therefore take away Sync's abilities to use them, but he is willing to let this entire thing go. The fact that Rogue attacked him, the fact that Polaris attacked his daughter, the fact that they have basically thrown his offer back in his face, the High Evolutionary is willing to forgive all transgressions for one thing and one thing only. He wants Sync's blood. Now, he doesn't want all of it, he just wants a single drop. He just wants enough to study Sync's DNA and learn how Sync is able to do what he's able to do and whether or not he can improve on the formula. That's ultimately what the High Evolutionary is always up to. Something that Sync does do. He relents. He makes the choice to give the High Evolutionary his blood and his DNA. And in a scene which, before I actually, go on any further in this, I did find it interesting that there's a moment that Wolverine and Sync share with one another that kind of hints at whether or not they're actually getting back that flame that they once had when they were both trapped in the vault on that reconnaissance mission back in X-Men number 18 and 19. Now, what is it exactly that the High Evolutionary has in store for Sync's DNA? We don't know right now, even though, yes, the X-Men, Cyclops more specifically, is incredibly flippant about what threat the High Evolutionary poses. He just kind of says, yeah, we'll deal with it when we deal with it. But the thing you got to think about is, if he has Sync's DNA, if he can isolate Sync's X gene, the thing you really have to be concerned with is the fact that Sync can borrow the abilities of anyone. Doesn't matter if they're a mutant or not. That is an incredibly potent thing to have at one's disposal, and just imagine his evolutionary guard being spliced with that ability. I mean, they may look like goofs, but it would be a dangerous thing. And that's just on the low end of what the High Evolutionary could do with Sync's DNA. Hell, he could make an army of Syncs if he really wanted to. That said, the High Evolutionary has what he wants, and he is more than willing to go. And I also find it interesting that he actually gives the X-Men a little bit more information to help them with the future threats of Cordyceps Jones, a being who he basically describes as being the natural progression from Mojo World's downfall, that he is basically providing a service that fills that void. He tells the X-Men that they can find Cordyceps Jones on Game World, and even reveals that he could have ultimately destroyed Cordyceps Jones himself. He just chooses not to because he finds Cordyceps Jones amusing. Another thing I think that's going to pay dividends down the road is that Luminous apparently was not aware that the High Evolutionary had the ability to turn off her powers, something that Polaris shouts out to Luminous, informing her, and it catches her off guard. This is probably something that's going to pay dividends down the road, as are a few other things that are going to come up in this comic. Once again, the idea of going after Game World, it's on. They're going to try and take down Cordyceps Jones before he becomes a bigger problem, because as we know, he's just going to keep Rita repulsoring monsters down to Earth until he gets the results that he wants. We also know that the character Fei Long is working with Orcus, or at least he's test trialing working with Orcus. We know that Henry Peter Gyrick has reached out to him, and we know that Orcus, through Gyrick, wants Fei Long and his company to continue working on their efforts to try to terraform Mars. Now, granted, they don't have to worry about terraforming Mars. The mutants already beat them to it, but he wants Fei Long to continue working on ways to set up a foothold on Mars and try and create a human civilization there to rival that of the mutants. Fei Long's company has basically created all of these rockets that were essentially meant to do exactly that, though it seems Fei Long has turned his attention towards doing something else with those rockets. We don't know exactly what it is he's planning to do with them, but it seems like he is preparing to launch some kind of a salvo against the mutants on Arakko. Who knows exactly what is going to be, but all we know is that he does say that if he survives the experience, he wants a seat at Orcus's table, and if he should fail in his efforts, Orcus would then have a martyr that they could use to turn human opinion towards Orcus versus Krakoa. Fei Long is the weird one here because we don't really know exactly what is in these rockets, whether or not it's weapons, whether or not these are bombs, whether or not he's going to take some fighting force for Arakko to try and destabilize the mutants' foothold there, or who knows what he's planning to do. But we do know that when the mutants terraformed Mars, it basically destroyed his life's work, because that is what he was working on. He was working on a way for humans to terraform Mars and turn it into a life-sustaining world. Well, the mutants beat him to it, and he has a grudge, and he is ready to hand them a receipt. Now, on the other side of things, we know that Dr. Stasis, he is meeting with Ben Urich of the Daily Bugle. Some of you may recognize his character even more from the Daredevil side of things, but we've seen Ben Urich as early as X-Men #1, and we know that he's investigating what's going on with the disappearing, reappearing mutants. We know that he was asking about Jumbo Carnation, and Dr. Stasis, what he's planning to do is he's planning to give Ben Urich all the information that he wants, because Dr. Stasis is not the type of villain that is going to throw hands with the X-Men the way the High Evolutionary did. No, that's not his thing. His whole thing is cloak and dagger, unleashing truths, shedding light where there is darkness. That is what Dr. Stasis is trying to accomplish. He's not going to fight the X-Men. He's not going to create an army to throw with them like the way the Cordyceps Jones is doing. He's not trying to kick off some massive fight to end it all. What he's trying to do is he's basically trying to put the mutants on the back foot, and what he plans to do is unleash the secret Orcus documents that he has that specifically reveal that Cyclops has died. He has all of the evidence, as we learned from X-Men #1 and #2. We know that he has all of the documents that detail everything that Orcus found after the X-Men attacked their base in House of X #3, 4, and 5. He knows everything. He knows all, and he gives it to Ben Urich. He now knows that Cyclops was lying about Jumbo Carnation, and more importantly, about himself. He doesn't necessarily know the secret behind mutant resurrection, but now Ben Urich is tasked with a tough choice. What does he do now with this information? Does he reveal it to the world? Does he tell the world the truth that the X-Men, the mutants on Krakoa, can die and come back to life, that they have beat death? Does he share that with the world, or does he keep it to himself? That is basically the threat that Dr. Stasis poses to Krakoa. Not so much a direct fight, but affecting public opinion about them. That is where Dr. Stasis seems to be throwing his lot in. All in all, a great issue. The High Evolutionary, not a character who I'm terribly fond of, but I thought he was pretty well used here, and I think sometimes a little lightheartedness, which Jerry Duggan did bring into this issue, which was for the most part a pretty serious issue, but he does throw in a few jabs here and there, even kind of throwing out the whole Cyclops was right meme, throwing it out there. I thought that was interesting in and of itself. But yeah, I thought this issue was pretty damn good. You know, Jerry Duggan's X-Men is building towards something, whereas Jonathan Hickman's X-Men was more of a series of one-shots that explained things further that were going on elsewhere in the X-Men's corner of the Marvel Comics universe. Jerry Duggan is telling a very complete story here that is starting at point A and it's working its way to point B, and it's doing a pretty good job of it. I'm ready to see a bit more of what Dr. Stasis has up his sleeve. I'm actually even more interested, though, to learn what Fei Long is up to. He is the character who I think is probably the more mysterious of the three new villains that have kind of pulled up to the X-Men's doorstep, that being, Cordyceps Jones, Dr. Stasis, Fei Long himself. I feel like Fei Long is the more secretive and more mysterious one out of the group, and that's saying something considering we've never even seen Dr. Stasis's face, so that's a very impressive feat. That said, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button, and make sure to share this video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to the new era of X-Men. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about X-Men number 3. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.